How to record exciting and interesting podcasts so that your listeners are involved in the language and the purpose of your presentation. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. I can go a stretch of time without doing a podcast for a variety of reasons. First off, I'm busy. And second, I really don't see the long-term value of the podcasts unless I'm taking additional steps. So let me explain, because this program is really about your ability to create exciting and interesting podcasts that people actually listen to. So the first factor, I always wonder about these individuals that do these daily podcasts. Are they doing any other work? Like maybe they're consultants that don't have any actual real work, so they're constantly every day trying to promote. Or are they smart individuals that know the promotion value of the activities that they do? Now, I do find that I can record a large number of podcasts that nobody ever listens to. Now, granted, in an individual day, there could be 1,000 or 2,000 people listening to this particular podcast, but they're not listening to the episode I put out just now. They're, wandering across an episode here and there. They listen to it. They might find it interesting. They might not. They might be using it to fill time. They could be listening to the podcast while they're on an exercise machine and they just didn't have a chance to respond. Because each podcast, I do try to get questions to give me content for additional materials. Now, that gives me the doubt because I can actually send a postcard out and get more people to listen to a podcast episode than naturally happens just posting episodes on the internet. So how do I write episodes that are interesting? How do I deliver to you insights that are not commonly readily available? Because this obviously isn't the only podcast on copywriting. It's probably the only podcast on the business of copywriting that covers the psychology and that covers the marketing aspects to grow your copywriting business. But ultimately, it's not the only 15 minutes of recording that anybody's doing. So what do I do? So first off, I gotta have the questions from people who are listening. That way I can tailor the content to those who are listening. This isn't my only podcast. I've got other podcasts that are available for a similar audience, high-income professionals and entrepreneurs. This one is specifically for copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals who tend to be high-income individuals or entrepreneurs. But if I don't have a question, I don't know really what to talk about. But when I do get a question, I can extract the context of that question into an outline and create a piece for a report. So I might have a 2 or 3 page or maybe a 1,500 word article that's built on the question that somebody has asked. Then I outline the article and can speak to it through a conversational style podcast. Now, very often I do these podcasts in the morning before breakfast because I seem to have a little bit more energy there. And so you have to pick the time of the day you have the most energy. But I am speaking to a crowd, one person at a time. This is very important. So if you want involvement of individuals to listen to your podcast, because I do have they listen to the majority of the podcast. I have people who pick up the podcast and subscribe, but I don't have thousands of subscribers. I have thousands of listeners, but not thousands of subscribers. So speaking to a single individual, like you would in any marketing campaign, helps pull out of the audience someone who has a high connection or a high, they feel like they belong here. Now, I want certain types of people, knowing full well that in society, only 10% of the population is a high-income individual. So I'm targeting a very tiny niche. So I'm developing each podcast as a lead generation piece to get them to my website to get engaged in either a consultation, to get engaged in a coaching program, to get engaged in something. So another tip here is that every podcast you produce needs a specific purpose and very often is a draft. So you can start with an outline or an article, is a draft for some larger opportunity. So as a copywriter, if you're going to do a podcast about copywriting or you're going to be a guest on a podcast about copywriting, you want to talk about how to choose a copywriter. You don't want to talk about how they can write copy, because if they can write their own copy, what do they need a copywriter for? You want to use the if you're going to hire a copywriter, here are the things you need to know. And by the way, here are some things you can do on your own and that makes it more cost effective. Or here are some things you shouldn't even attempt because you're too close to the problem. So you want to set up the listener to take a specific action that leads to the purchase of your services. Now, if you're a marketing agency, you might want to talk about why hiring freelance copywriters, one-on-one copywriters, is sometimes very dangerous because often you're going to have a jack of all trades. Now, if you're a freelance copywriter, you can talk about how hiring an agency is difficult because you're going to have a copywriter working on so many different types of topics that they're not going to be specialists to your market. Do you see how this works? The podcast has to have a purpose. The audio has to have a purpose. So when I say podcasts are not very useful, it's because I'm not trying to record a podcast here. I'm recording a lead generation piece. As with all my lead generation pieces, at the end, I'm going to let you know that if you want one-on-one coaching or you have questions or concerns about what we talked about, you can contact me at the Ad Briefings website, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about how we can improve your ability to do audio recorded lead generation pieces. Now, if I use the vernacular, the podcast language, that everybody really understands that. You know what a podcast is because you're technically subscribed to one right now. But if you want results from your recorded messages or your video, video log or your special reports, the concept is you're writing lead generation. Now, I just did a recording of a podcast that offers a report called What the Most Intelligent and Successful Humans Know About This Key Factor to Peak Performance. And the whole podcast was teasing them about the benefits of peak performance and about what having this key factor does to eliminate a whole long list of problems. Now, at the end, I gave them a specific exercise that'll give them better clarity about the specific problems they face and how to get a copy of this report. See, that's the outline. And so if you start from an outline and you have it written out on a piece of paper in front of you, you're not reading the paper. You're having a conversation with a specific individual in an audience, inviting them to come towards a solution, and you're helping to bridge from where they are to where they want to be. So you as a copywriter, you're probably thinking about, well, wouldn't it be great if I had a podcast? Because I could record all these episodes. I could record 4 or 5 episodes a day. I could trickle them out. I could send emails, and it's content because obviously content is king. If you've read any of my reports, content is not king, by the way. But it seems like it's something easy to do. And there's a lot of people out there saying, yes, podcasting is easy. You can get this microphone and you can get this device. And by the way, if you click my link, I'll get a small commission. I'm recording this on a cell phone with an app. I got microphones, I've got mixers, I've got audio editing software, but my methodology for podcasting is not to create a podcast, it's to generate leads. And that's a very important takeaway right now. You've got to understand if you're going to take the time to record, then you need to get some leads. And then you're going to take that recording and have it transcribed, and with the original outline that you had, have it finished into a special report, which you're then going to offer to what? Everybody, raise your hand, generate leads. Now, how do you make it exciting? Well, you make it conversational. Because it's a recorded media, you want to go a little bit beyond your normal personality, and you use gestures and move around the room and look and use your imagination, but share with the audience a story that takes them from where they are to where they want to be. So in the case that you're listening, again, you're thinking about a podcast, you're thinking about another way to reach out for prospects. You're maybe been bought into the fantasy that all these I have 122 episodes of one of my podcasts, and I get like 200 or 300 listeners a day. But how many leads do I get from it? Maybe 1 or 2 a week. Because again, the media is out there. There are people wandering around the internet just listening to stuff. It might take 2 or 3 listens before someone commits, even to just to subscribe. The platforms have barriers to entry. So I think I'm on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Play, the audibles, I think, as well. I think we syndicate to like 15 different channels. Now, each individual channel probably has 1 or 2 listeners. I don't know. But ultimately, altogether, I have 200 or 300 listeners a day, and there's still so few leads. And I thought to myself, well, podcasting, it doesn't seem to be working. I got a lot of listeners. I don't have that many leads coming in. But what I do is I send a letter or a postcard that leads to the specific campaign. I send it to a targeted list. And then when they go through, I get leads every time. And very often those leads are quality enough to turn into sales. So what am I saying here? Well, I'm saying that it's quite possible that these 200 or 300 listeners a day are actually robots and miscounts, or it's a platform trying to get me to pay for advertising. Which, by the way, you can record your podcasts and then use the platform to advertise that specific podcast to a target market, who will then generate the lead. Can you see where I'm getting at here? It doesn't matter if it's in print. It doesn't matter if it's an audio program. It doesn't matter if it's video. If you're going to create any content, the content has to work for you. Because if it's not working for you, you're just creating content for search engines. You're creating content for someone's advertising platform. You're creating content for someone else's outcome. Because Spotify with I think I got 100,000 podcasts, makes money whether anybody listens to any of the podcasts. They make money when people just go to the website and see what podcasts are available. Does this click? Do you understand what I'm saying? If you want to grow your copywriting business, if you want to grow and become an agency or a business development consultant, if you want 6-figure projects, and you have to farm the market. And the way you do that is you create the materials for a specific audience. You create lead generation materials. You can even use the AIDA formula: attention, interest, desire, action. You get their attention with the opener. You introduce who you are and who this podcast is for. Then you start talking about some benefits to build up the interest. And then you talk about, well, you know what? If you have these benefits, what would life be like? And then you give them 1 or 2 steps, maybe 3 steps, maybe 4 steps on how to take the next step towards the outcome that they desire. And by the way, if you raise your hand and ask your questions, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions in a future podcast. Now, one thing I don't do well, which works for other people, is I don't ask you to like and subscribe. And that's because I know my audio is syndicated on many, many different networks. So, you can follow me on such and such a network. I don't want my leads to be in the platforms. I want my leads to be at my website on my mailing list. I actually want postal addresses because I send mail out to people. So you have to decide for you where you want that to be. Now, if you get liked and subscribed in different platforms, like when this goes out onto YouTube, the like and subscribe on YouTube actually increases the chance that video will be available to other people. But again, I will send target prospects to the audio and video that I'm creating, into the featured articles that I'm creating. I'll send them direct. So I don't really need the likes and subscribe to the network, but if you ask for them, you will get them. Now, the problem is once they've liked and subscribed, they think they're done. They don't think they have to go some other step. So again, you can offer a report. So like the last podcast I recorded for another channel was basically, hey, look, here's this exciting report I'm editing. Here are the key factors you need to consider. Oh, by the way, there's one factor that's hidden from everybody. If I explained it to you here, it wouldn't make any sense. But by the way, I'm creating this report for my client. And if you'd like a copy of it, here's what you do. Does that make sense? Does it sound like something that you can do? And by the way, you can incorporate conditional closes. You can incorporate the yes answers. That's part of the language patterns you might use. But if it's not interesting, if it's not exciting, folks won't listen. So let me wrap this up with saying I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing Copyright Tips. This is how you create an exciting podcast. Now, your personality could be different. But if you don't have some level of excitement for that specific target audience, and if you don't deliver something in every episode that they can take action with, ideally to take action in a way that gets you their name, address, and phone number, then you're just stroking your ego. I've heard people brag about the number of subscribers they have on a certain platform. Well, I'm on 8 different platforms. I don't have any idea how many subscribers are on each of these platforms. I have a general idea how many people listen, but what I'm measuring is conversion rates. And my conversion rate is very, very low, so I'm also looking at what is my quality of lead by their back-end conversion. Now, quality of lead is very good, so it doesn't bother me to do this, but I can test and see whether or not the podcasts work at all by sending people directly to an episode. Now, where do I send them directly to an episode? I send them to my website so that we can cookie them and follow them all around the internet. And I'm being very transparent here because you're marketers, business development professionals, you're copywriters, you kind of understand how the system works. But now you have a little background about how to make the system work for you. If you have any questions about this or anything else we cover here, contact me at www.adbriefings.co.uk. Feed my editorial calendar with your questions, and if I've already answered your question, I'll send you over to a podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips.